Welcome to Portals of Perception and to Evolving Together episode number 3. Today we are looking to build on our earlier conversations and reflect on how we are evolving together the process of mutual liberation and the unlock of the human potential, individually and together. I'm here with two good friends, Nigel and Well, each one of them with their own unique PhD journey. And PhD means for us here the personal human development journey. Nigel, Well, welcome.
Thank you, Aviv.
Thank you, Aviv.
Well, let me begin by asking what's alive for you today about this adventure that we are developing.
I think one of the things I'd say immediately is the magnitude of what we're dealing with here. Because human life is so wonderful, so extraordinary, and yet so curtailed, so prevented, so isolated, so separated out into separate units when it could be so much better. And that's a big issue that we're facing. But I do feel that we can make progress with it. And the wonderful thing about humans are, though they don't realize it, they are interconnected as a family. And therefore, anything that is done that is worthwhile benefits the family. And that's really what we're at here, doing some work for the family of humankind.
And how do you help, well, somebody who is struggling to join this perception that we're doing work for the family and we are part of a family, when they say, well, yeah, sure, but I was born alone and I will die alone, so there is something singular and individual about each person. And I'm guessing you will reason that this perspective and what you are describing, they're not mutually exclusive, they're not in conflict. But how would you ease somebody to come along with us, with you, into the way, the lens through which you are looking at the conundrum?
I think the way I'd approach that is to say that you could say that each of us has 3 levels, 3 fundamental levels. And the first one is you could describe it as your physical life, your planetary life that you're born into, that grows upon you. And in the beginning, you're very helpless and in the hands of others, clearly, because you need support. So we start out in our lives inherently not alone because we need others just to survive. So that's how it begins. Then we enter a phase of discovering ourselves uniquely. And that, I would describe it as our universal life, our special universal life that each of us has. And we're alone in that, in the sense that it's ours to discover. It's different in each life. So nobody can do your universal life for you. Doesn't work like that. But what can happen is, as we're doing here, my universal life can talk to your universal life, and we can discover things via that dialogue. And so a great deal of the work to discover and find oneself in that sense is done via dialogue and experience with others, and with other things, and with the whole experience of living. And then I would say, at the deeper level, at the very much deeper level, we have a spiritual life. And that inherently that is not alone.
So you're offering a simple grounding perspective and framework to appreciate human life. Your first you or your first self is you're appearing in a planetary body, and that journey begins with being completely dependent on the love and care and kindness of the adults around you. Most of the time they half know what they're doing, which is why it's a miracle. we actually get to discover who we are. And then you're saying there is a second life, a second you, a second self, which is you beginning to pioneer, discover what you call universal life, and you can become entrepreneurial about that. And through that, there is a third life that you frame in the idea of spiritual life. And in that sense, you're saying in the spiritual dimension of you, you're saying we are not individuals. Just ground a little more about the we and the us and the together in the spiritual dimension.
Well, I think if you look at the whole panorama of the spiritual experience, basically people describe a sense of being joined to something. Yeah, bigger than themselves, greater than themselves, being part of something greater than themselves. So clearly the spiritual realms open up into that possibility. And when you meet in a deep way with another human being, there's also the sense that you are not really separate. Yeah, there's something that binds and joins you by the fact of that spiritual connection. So it's a very deep thing, difficult to talk about, but
we're here to talk about difficult things.
Revelatory, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we are, yeah.
Well, it's not difficult to talk about in the sense of, I suppose what you mean by that, it's not easy to access.
That's right.
The translation of that experience, and just not to lose the thread, and then we'll bring Nigel with what's alive for you. This last thread you're offering has about it the awareness that you can actually be separated because you are individuated and not separated all at the same time. So you can be operating and living, you are operating and living in more than one dimension at any one time, and such that we can have the experience that we are inside one and the same thing, and in that sense we are joined to something and are together, even while we are each operating inside a separate, complete planetary body.
Yes, and even at planetary level, we're so interdependent. If you think about it, so much of what we need to survive and carry on depends intrinsically on others and the fact that we work together humanly. Else we couldn't put food on the table. The lights wouldn't be on. All these things that are intrinsic to the way we live now is all to do with cooperation at planetary level.
And we're going to explore a lot more about that. Let me bring Nigel, please. What's alive for you today about this adventure we're in?
I'd like to pick up on something that one of you said a few minutes ago about we're born alone and we die alone. And I can see that, but I see that while we're here, we have the permission to create relationships. And one of the things I like to do is look into how my body works as my guidance to how to proceed. And there's many layers to my life. At the bottom level, I'm talking physical, it's a bunch of atoms. But they don't hang around alone. They get together in molecules, which is like the next level up. And likewise, the molecules, they don't behave in isolation because they get together in cells, which interestingly is the first level of organic life. And those cells are part of an organ. which work together to fulfill a function. And those organs work together to support my life. So there's a whole trace of integration in my systems. And it's almost as though the human could be the missing link between the systems of oneself and the integration intrinsic to it, and the next level of family, society. And it feels like we need to put in place the integrating systems that naturally fit at our level. Because a curious thing is that whatever life is, it transcends through the wholeness. It's like it needs a whole life for the life force to be functional in it. And then the organs get their dispensation from that life force. So it's like, on the one hand, we're putting ourselves together to allow a greater transcendence from whatever that life force is. And I feel like there's a lot of work to do, certainly in myself, in the building of relationship and the life that can come through that is actually transformational to me and to every other participant in the relationship. So,
yeah. Well, so the differentiating threshold in the way you're building the narrative is that the atoms and the molecules and the cells and the organs, you could say, got together of their own accord. They were pulled together by some other power, the power of life, the organizing, integrating power of life. And whatever way you choose to theologically and evolutionarily contemplate this, is there a telos? Is there a pull to that futuring of the human phenomenon? Or is it emerging differently? I personally believe that one of the problems we are facing today is that we are locked in a materialistic perspective. And one of the problems with a materialistic perspective is that we can only consider the paradigm that begins with dust or from atoms and goes up, rather than contemplate what has been the contemplation of people who quest and inquired into the universe before science, and had their way of knowing and appreciating the universe before we stumbled upon the beautiful, logical roadmap of science. And my question, talking about integration, is can we actually integrate the scientific point of view with another point of view that actually contemplates that there is the imagery of the future by way of very rarefied, call it spiritual, call it intelligence, translucent, invisible image of that model that's emerging as a result of that. But I was about to reach to the differentiating threshold in your story, and then I got interested in what I was saying and got carried away. The unique thing about your story is, so they got together. That is, the atoms and the cells and the molecules and the organs. You're describing that inside the threshold of becoming a human, there is a missing link. If that is true, that missing link is not going to be orchestrated in any automated way. There is the significance of choice and consciousness and sentiment and how we perceive ourselves and each other So how do you narrate this story, this perspective of the missing link and the journey of coming together? I mean, we call this evolving together. We're actually inquiring, what does it mean to evolve together?
Yeah. Well, it's curious that humans have choice, isn't it? It looks like the cells, the organs, whatever, don't have that individual choice. And the human, as a connective link between all those lives, does. So it's suggesting to me the importance of using that choice in the furtherance of what is already established. But maybe we provide the opportunity to refine the whole systems that we have through our choices. And I see intrinsic to that is choosing the families that we wish to participate in. Because I feel whenever I meet another person, what I register now is it allows me to be conscious of a different part of myself. In the meeting, I'm discovering that my systems are way more intelligent than me, because they're trying to tune themselves all the time to whatever I'm facing. It's like if I meet somebody from a foreign country, I notice my voice box is struggling to match their tone, their accent. And I become aware that my whole systems are designed to tune into others. And in that, find a different part in my own life. So it's a bit like new lives get born in each by the meeting with others.
Yeah.
And the corollary in that is that not meeting others allows no development, or it's not no development, but in meeting others, there's a development opportunity.
So one way I hear the narration of the experience of meeting another is that it's as though implicit in it is the recognition that you are saying, I am a fragment. Yeah. I am a fragment of the whole. And when I meet another, in the integration and the attunement of the fragment to each other, there is an unlock and a discovery of a greater whole that we are part of, that resonates and is emergent when we interact, when we meet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, part of the curiosity about our design is that we're each unique in the details, but we also have the same basic constitution. So there's a uniqueness or an intrinsic difference in each of us, but then there's also an intrinsic sameness. And unfortunately, the society that we live in doesn't seem to amplify the sameness part. It says, you're an individual, you're different. Work on that. Which I can see the sense of. I also find in the working of it, I find increasing sameness with others.
You're defying the materialistic commercial agenda of you got to work on your competitive advantage, so you can win in the marketplace.
Absolutely.
And you're saying that paradigm, that paradigmatic capture prevents us from recognizing the bigger element where we are not different, where we are same. And I suppose there is a suggestion in that being raised in a free market capitalistic economy that drives to indeed emphasize and amplify competitive advantage and personal differentiation, there is a myopic focus that develops out of that, where we indeed not only are building a focus to magnify our uniqueness, but building a whole set of capabilities to diminish the other. So not only are we focusing, it's a double whammy. Not only are we focusing on the amplification of our uniqueness, we develop a whole set of strategies and armory to diminish and destroy the other.
Yes.
And that's a lot of what is going on.
Yeah. It's an enigma, isn't it, that our greatest communion is in our difference. The fact that we're all different is a communion.
Yeah.
Indeed. Please, well, what is this bringing up in you?
So many things in reality. It's I've got half a dozen different responses going on, all of them with the potential to go quite deep. The first thing that I would point to is the story that Nigel told about integration, and how really the whole story, the whole process of integration that has given the human form the opportunity it now has. Because clearly there's been a whole building process over, we believe, something like 4 billion years, in which things have been coming together, integrating, making ever more complex systems to develop to the model that we are now sitting inside of, which is an extraordinary journey. Now, that for me is the major note, the major theme in the whole process of evolution. It's an integrating process. So this very myopic and very short-sighted view that says that evolution is a process of competition doesn't sit well with me. I think it's a very small part of the evolutionary process to do with selection, really, yes. Filling out the space, filling out an evolutionary niche, perhaps, but it's certainly not the main line of evolution. It's an integrating process. And that's important in how we think about it, because if we want to go forward, evolving together, then it's all about integration. How do we integrate in a productive and useful way? And that leads into another thing that Nigel was saying, because if you think about it, the uniqueness, the specialness of each of us as a life, as an individual, is something to do with what we came into this world with, however you define that. But when we meet each other, we're actually coming into contact with something else that is different to us. And in the best case of two things that are different meeting, something else becomes possible that wasn't preconceived, wasn't pre-planned, wasn't pre-given. And life itself, therefore, takes a huge leap forward by the fact that lives can meet and integrate and build things together. Now, this is obvious at physical level, but at higher levels, it's even more extraordinary. Because it could say, for example, that we are now at a level where conscious participation in evolution for real is becoming possible. And prior to this time, evolution was a kind of release process. But now it's something that we can engage in and participate in because it's becoming conscious. This is a very, very deep issue.
Well, so let me inquire that we build on two themes. First is the theme of tuning into another life, which you raised, Nigel, when you said, I realized that my system is actually designed to tune into another life. Play with that and with a theme that, well, you just brought now forward in this idea that when two when two lives tune into each other, there is a whole something else. You could call it a third dimension that's birthed. Just before we launch into the furthering and the exploration of these two, to bring along an awareness about when you say it's all about integration. The way I hear it is integration also integrates differentiation and separation. So the nuance, there's important nuance there. It's not integration as a polarity to differentiation. It's an integration that has an emergent property and capacity to integrate all the differentiations and all the separations, and continually so. An important realization about the continual process of integration. And this is not just playing with words. We have the living embodied experience of when you're with another person and you tease, as we are now teasing, the nuances of perception, and we continue to grow and expand through the awareness and the perspective of the other person. So when you describe what you're describing, say, Nigel, about the sense of, when I tune into another person and they have a different accent, I bring an accent, and you're saying that there is, so this is both an energetic phenomenon, it's a neurobiological phenomenon, because the mirroring neurons in the brain, that they are in the business of mirroring, and this is an evolutionary capacity we carried from the phenomenon of life wanting to facilitate communication and integration. So there is, and part of that is expressed in those mirroring neurons in our brain, such that when we meet a person that is configured differently, thinking differently, speaking differently, you're saying you're even registering how in the tuning it changes the vocal configurations to, in a way, match and harmonize to the tonality and the voice of the other person. It's just a beautiful awareness. And the way I hear this is where the integration is one that integrates all differences and all differentiations. Because when we journey, certainly in our upbringing, we have the experience that when we tune into another person, we lose ourselves a little bit. And part of the maturation and growing up is, how can I tune into another person and actually tune deeper into me, so I am also tethered in myself in this configuration, rather than lose that. Right there is an important distinction in the development and the evolutionary journey of us as individuals. So can we just stay with this for a bit and ask you to bring your insight, your awareness to this extraordinary gift from the evolution of life, the capacity to tune into another person as an energetic phenomenon, as a psychological, psychobehavioral occurrence, and as certainly as a communication thing. Can we play with that for a bit, and then we'll move to explore the third dimension, please?
Well, again, that's an enormous issue, because if you observe children, or you remember what it was like to be a child, most of your learning is by a kind of system copying. So, for example, you're introduced to cowboys and Indians, or it used to be when I was a kid, and you copy the frequency, right? And you learn about cowboys by becoming a cowboy. You know, you actually, the systems take the frequency into you and absorb it, and you get to understand about it directly, which is a lot quicker, a lot more effective than, for example, book learning, because the whole of you is absorbing and taking in the signal. And therefore, if you like, rather than being a digital computer, you are an analog computer, which configures itself to be the same as something else. And all of your systems get part of the story. Yeah, so it's a very direct way of learning. And it's a natural way of learning.
Let me just take what you offered there, Well, and go esoteric about it for a minute to describe that what you are painting occurs at least 3, if not 7 different dimensions and levels. Now, I'm obviously observing this with my granddaughter. She's now 3.5, and now her brother, my grandson, who is just 2 months old, and with her, I can see how when she's introduced into something new, she would stare at it, she would actually absorb it. Now, what occurs there is, I believe it occurs energetically. She takes in the full impression of the experience, number 1, so there is an energetic imprint. That then goes into her brain, and her brain actually 3D print the model, the hologramic model of the energetic experience, and configures those circuitry of connection in her brain. And I propose that the soul, and we use here the word soul in a very specific context, not in the general loose description of souls, but soul to mean the hologramic loom of intelligence that orchestrates the human system to mediate and negotiate its operation and expression in a planetary theater. And in that sense, so when she's introduced to dancing with music, and she sees just a bit of a ballet, her capacity to immersively internalize it occurs at the level of the music and the integration of the experience and the feeling and the sentiments, and she can mimic some of the facial expressions and the sentiments that presumably she is well advanced of her age because of that hologramic transfer, and it occurs, I'm suggesting, energetically in her brain, in the soul orchestration, and in the way she's then able to move her entire body. So profound is that transference, and you are essentially saying that kind of learning and development is so rapid, so much faster than any academic book learning. And you'd wonder why we've largely given this up for intellectual academic learning as the main path of the acquisition of knowledge. This is why in the little more ancient worlds, the core experience of learning was through apprenticeship. Today we call it mentoring, but apprenticeship meant you were in the presence of a master. If you wanted to learn how to draw and how to and how to create art, you wanted to be next to Michelangelo, next to Leonardo da Vinci. And you didn't just see them in the way they were creating the Last Supper or any other piece of art. You were in their presence in the way they prepared their work and all the rest of it. So there was more of a holistic transference of the experience. So you could now come and bring us back to the theme. You could tune in not just to the brain, but to the totality of their experience and the expression of their life.
Absolutely so. It's interesting, you know, because this applies to anything. You can go, for example, to be close to a tree. And if you stay there for a bit and you let your systems tune in, you can begin to feel the nature of the tree and what the life of the tree is like. And you can even have an exchange between your life and its life, though its life is very different to yours. So we're actually equipped to connect into pretty much anything. It's not even confined to Earth.
Yeah.
You know, you can tune into, for example, another planet.
Yeah.
And investigate the frequency of that. If you know its nature, if you can get some experience of it.
So you're skating to the edge. Some people would find it difficult to follow you and say, yeah, I can get the sense of I can tune into another person, but you're saying, oh, you can actually tune into anything. You can tune into a tree, and it will feel different when you tune into a large oak tree versus an apple tree. So, well, if you're somebody that worked with trees and you're into the natural worlds and you have the frame of reference, people can assimilate it in this way. But you're saying, no, you don't actually have to be an expert on the science of trees. The human has a machinery where it can develop the sensitivity. I guess if somebody never considered it before, well, the easiest path for them is that many people will admit that they can feel their pet. They have certain sensitivity to their pet, and their pet begins to develop sensitivity back to them. So there is a reciprocity there. But you just went quickly to the edge by suggesting that, and even suggesting that you can tune into a different planet. And you don't mean this in the astrological sense, in the sense of learning astrology. You are proposing that this universe, the dense material and the energetics of the universe, these are simply, it's a universe of frequencies and energies. And you're saying, in what you earlier described as the second life, where the human is universal, the human is both universal and non-local, so we can nearby sense and attune to another person standing next to us. And you're saying there is a faculty, there is a capacity for a human, when you practice and you build that sensitivity, to tune into even distant things, such as you can tune to another person who is on the other side of the planet without speaking into them, and you will know whether they're suffering or whether they're cheerful today. Sometime you'll know, and over time you'll know more. So you're opening. I asked you to offer some more further opening of this extraordinary capacity that we have to tune into each other, to tune into things, and you just open the vista to the broader sense of the human capacity to tune and the human sensitivity. Nigel, please play jazz with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're highlighting another aspect of the human enigma, because we're born on a planet in the universe, and science presents its discoveries about the universe to the human. And in this age, people think to get into the universe, you need to go out there. But we must have all the codings of the universe in us, because if it's not in us, you wouldn't be able to see it. It's like the tuning fork. So we must have all the tuning forks of the universe in us. And to build the universe is to go inward. So we see the universe out there in the heavens, but we access it by going deep in ourselves. And we build it by going deep in ourselves. So we're building the universe inside us, which is another part of the conundrum, really.
Can we actually try to integrate these two appreciations together? You're proposing that the entire universe is right here inside us, or else we wouldn't be able to appreciate it and sense it. And another way of appreciating that same idea is that, well, the entire universe is right here inside us because we are a product, or we are an outcome of the entire evolution of the universe. So can we hold that and bring into it now the other piece that you spoke to before? So here we are, three universes or three products of the universe, and we are playing with two captivating ideas. One is that we can tune inside ourselves to come to know of the universe at large, and we can tune into each other because we each represent a unique configuration from the universe, and by tuning into each other, now I'm bringing the piece that Well offered before, that we can begin to sense and recognize the bigger configuration that the universe is in. In other words, there is a part of the configuration of the universe that I can tune into myself. But through your awareness and your consciousness and your cosmology, dare I say, I get to discover a whole other part of the universe that I never could experience on my own.
And this is very, very far-reaching, Aviv, because, you've spent your lifetime, right, studying, growing, developing, merging, mixing with all sorts of different things. And they're all in you. You carry them. And I, in my own way, have done the same thing. Yeah. Different experience, different mergings, different learnings, and so on. Now, if we actually deeply and profoundly connect to each other, guess what? I get some of what you have, and you get some of what I have. And in deep transference terms, that's an extraordinary way to grow. Because I don't have to do the work that you did, and you don't have to do the work that I did. Some of it transferred. And then it's just a question of how much of that can you access and use in relation to your own life.
Well, so you're describing, I believe, the economics of the universe. and the economics of the universe is, rather than competing with each other and destroying each other, we can actually benefit each other because you get to access and I get to access. And we each get to access through each other the part of the work that you have done in the configuration that you have generated in yourself.
Yeah.
Please.
So the capacity of connection is an extraordinary gift. Yeah. It gives us access to so many things.
Could it be that we are each different end-stop products of the universal transcendence? So we are like, in getting together with each other, we're like new chemicals to combine into new chemical reactions to create a surrogate new universe beyond the one that formed us.
Sure.
Yeah. In which you're saying that the the gift of human life and human consciousness is that it's the portal through which the universe is able to birth its new possibility. And we humans become the midwifery agency of universal evolution. We are flying high, my friends. So these are advanced ideas, and as often happens, I did have an intent that we will also do a follow-up on our last conversation, where we looked at what stops us and what holds us back, and we wanted to ask what might be some ways to absolve those vectors and those experiences, and what becomes possible for us when we do so. So I believe we just reverse the order, and we answer the second question first, just going live and flowing with what becomes possible for us. And my suggestion is we press pause here, we complete this episode 3, and we do the next episode to follow on some of the work we've done earlier. How about that as our next move?
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, thank you for joining us in Evolving Together. We're going to meet you on the other side in the next episode, and please come along for the ride. The whole idea of Evolving Together is there is something occurring at this time on this planet with many people in all places, through all lines of inquiry, where we are discovering that there is a new potential, a new capacity that is coming online, that is being activated. And we are generating these Evolving Together conversations to inspire as many circles, as many people in as many places to discover with your friends this simple core question: how are we evolving together? What becomes possible for us when we evolve together? Thank you very much. We'll see you on the other side on the next episode. Along with our website at portalsofperception.org, Portals is also available on YouTube and on all podcast platforms, as well as social media. You can become an active member and join the conversation in community events. And you can help us get the word out by liking this content and by sharing it with your friends.